All last week, people asked me, where is the downfield passing game for Carolina? Where are the explosive plays? And what do you know? You got them on Sunday during Bryce Young's career day. Let's look back at the good, the bad, and the ugly from the Panthers' walk-off win in overtime down in Atlanta.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, the part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network in the entire country. Thanks for watching the show here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers, and that can be you, can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Back here once again on a Tuesday, the Carolina Panthers getting a comeback walk-off win in overtime against the Falcons on Sunday, winning 30-27. The story, of course, was Bryce Young. 448 yards passing, 84 more passing yards, 2 more touchdown passes than he had combined in the 3 weeks prior. And those wins against Green Bay, the loss against Buffalo, and the loss against the Saints, just insane how the Panthers' passing attack has looked so bad, even in wins, but certainly awful in losses, and then that happened. How is it even possible to go from what we saw against New Orleans and even what we saw against Green Bay to what we saw on Sunday down in Atlanta? I don't know. I'll try to answer that later on here on the show, as Dave Canales, Carolina Panthers head coach, did speak to the media on Monday, go over a few things that he had to say, but also get to the root of the question everybody wants to know. Why can't that always be the case for Carolina through the passing game, as we saw on Sunday? Of course, on Fridays throughout the regular season, I give you my 3 keys of victory. Then here on Tuesday, we go over them. We'll do that later on the show. Let's start off this Tuesday, as we start off every single Tuesday throughout the regular season, and that's by me going over the good, the bad, and the ugly from the Panthers' previous game. And not a lot of ugly things about sweeping the Atlanta Falcons and winning in OT like we saw on Sunday down there in Georgia. Let's start off with, obviously, the good. All last week, all the mailbag questions I got at Julian Council, Twitter, Blue Sky, doing it again tomorrow. Get those questions into me right now by adding me or DMing me. But all the questions that I received were about Bryce Young and whether he was the right guy in Carolina. I saw plenty of people on social media after the loss against New Orleans saying that they were out on Bryce. They're done. Get a new quarterback. Let's start over. And I personally do not want to have to cover a brand new quarterback search and all the hope and even maybe full-heartedness that comes from all of that, which we have seen in the past. And since I've been doing this show over the last 5 seasons here on Locked On Panthers, I didn't want to do it again. I was hoping that Bryce could figure it out. And at least for 1 week, it sure as hell looks like he's figured it out. Again, a franchise record, 448 yards passing. More in a single game than Cam Newton ever did, Jake Delhomme ever did, Steve Berline, Kerry Collins, Brian St. Pierre. What a day for that kid after all the hell that he caught last week. And honestly, rightfully so. New Orleans said, hey, Bryce, can you beat us? Bryce said, no, I can't. So obviously, there's going to be questions asked about Bryce. And when you look at the season in totality and you look at the past 2.5 seasons as him being the starter in Carolina, there have been few and far between moments to really look at and point to, oh yeah, he's the guy, especially throughout the entirety of a game. At the end of games, as we saw on Sunday, his 10th game-winning drive, that is more than any quarterback since he has entered the league back in 2023. More than Josh Allen, who has 9, more than Patrick Mahomes, who has 9, more than Jalen Hurts, who has 9. Those are MVPs, Super Bowl winning quarterbacks, not Josh, but Super Bowl winning quarterbacks who have less game-winning drives than Bryce Young has. So you wanted to know, where was the downfield passing attack? Where was the explosive plays through the air? You got those on Sunday. The Panthers entered Sunday 29th in the NFL in explosive pass play percentage, according to True Media. That was only ahead of the Browns, the Saints, and the Jets. And I understand the Saints beat this Panthers team, but my God, the Browns, the Saints, the Jets have had some of the worst quarterback play in the league this year. They're starting rookies. They're starting guys who have no business being starting quarterbacks at this stage of his career. And the Panthers are in the same neighborhood as them heading into Sunday. Then when you look at week 11 across the NFL, the Panthers had the fourth highest explosive play percentage at 18% in total through the air. They had 9 explosive plays. When you look at the last 3 games against New Orleans, Green Bay, and Buffalo, a loss, a win, and a loss, the Panthers had 9 combined. 9 combined explosive plays through the air in those 3 games, and then 9 on Sunday. And that is one of the highest totals we've seen since Bryce Young has been the quarterback here in Carolina. The only other game in Bryce Young's career with more explosive pass plays were the 10 that he and the Panthers offense had back in week 16 in 2023 of his rookie season against an awful Packers defense. That had not been a bad secondary in Atlanta, who they did this against on Sunday. And you look at it also even further, it wasn't like there was a ton of downfield shots. Looking at the stats, only 4.4% of Bryce's attempts were 20 plus yards on Sunday. The Panthers wide receivers, though, they made big plays. And I brought this up on Friday when looking at the keys of victory and the offensive passing attack and trying to find some balance. While, yeah, Bryce wasn't really grading out well, and a lot of his numbers were pretty low when looking at the rest of the quarterbacks in the league, the receiving game, those guys hadn't really done a ton with the ball either. They were only averaging 3 yards after the catch. On Sunday, 8 yards after the catch, the most since averaging 9.9 in that beatdown against the Lions in week 16 of the 2022 season, the greatest offensive output in the history of this organization. Bryce Young's 10 yards per attempt on Sunday are the most in his career by a long shot, 8.7 versus Green Bay back in week 16 of that 2023 season. That's the second highest. So 1.3 yards per attempt more on Sunday than he had ever had in a single game in his career. And also looking at it, you saw so many guys involved offensively receiving the ball. You looked at Tedero McMillan, Jalen Coker getting opportunities. You saw Rico Dowdle getting the ball, XL getting the ball. In total, five Panthers who had 50 plus receiving yards in that game. That is the first time in franchise history that has happened, whether in the regular season or the playoffs, where 5 different Panthers receivers had 50 plus yards receiving. An unbelievable performance, and hopefully one that will carry forward as Panthers are right here thickly in the playoff hunt heading into the holidays. Now, second half domination, that was another one of the good. And let's be honest, this should have never gone to overtime, guys. The Panthers outgained Atlanta 345 yards to 91 in the second half and overtime. Atlanta had 4 yards in overtime. This should not have been a game that went to OT. If the Panthers just would have finished off some of those drives there in the third quarter and, of course, in the fourth quarter with touchdowns or a point period, then they're not wasting their time by going to OT. The last time that the Panthers held an opponent to that few of yards in the second half or overtime was in their week 15 win against these same Falcons in that rain-soaked day in Uptown Charlotte, where they held them to 67 yards in the second half in that game. Stats on True Media only date back to 2000, but the Panthers 345 yards of offense in the second half and overtime is the most that they've had during the past 25 years in Carolina. So again, another great performance by that offense, total across the board. Corey Thornton, he's another part of the good. He got a lot of burn on Sunday, in large part because Lathan Ransom was not available after injuring his hand and having surgery last week. And you kept hearing it on the broadcast, but Corey Thornton's getting even more play over Shaw Smith-Wade in that game, playing 46 snaps, 27 of those were in coverage. He was the Panthers' highest graded defender on Sunday. He tallied a 79.5 coverage grade. He was targeted 7 times, allowed 4 receptions, 336 yards rather, 71.1 passer rating, and had 1 pass breakup. And I think that was the call that should have been a PI after the bad PI call rather, on J.C. Horn earlier on that drive. Either way, Corey Thornton really impressed during the preseason, got an opportunity on Sunday and made the most of it, being the highest graded Panthers defender according to PFF in this game. The bad, only 2 things I want to point at. One of them was the blitz pickup. One thing that we did not ask Dave about was who was to blame for the sack that Bryce took there on the second drive of the game that injured his ankle. But we did see several times on Sunday the Panthers were checking out of a play, knowing that the blitz was going to come, and Bryce was still getting sacked or was still under pressure. Why did that happen? And that's not the first time we've seen that happen across the last year and a half with Dave Canales as the head coach and play caller in Carolina. Now, PFF only credited one of the 5 sacks on the Panthers offensive line, and that was credited to Chandler Zavala, who, no surprise here, was the lowest graded player on offense, had a 49.5 pass blocking grade on true pass sets on Sunday. I don't understand why Dave went with him at right guard. You paid Austin Corbett and wanted him to be your starting center. He was your starting center. He got hurt. Cade Mays just held down to that job, and then you have Corbs back out there. Why would you want Zavala, who is clearly not a better player than Austin Corbett, starting for you at right guard? And as we saw, miscommunication there. Brady Quinn was saying it was on him. Maybe Dave can provide more clarity when he speaks to us later on this week on Thursday. But yeah, that one does not make any sense to me. And the Panthers offensive line, while maybe it's not their fault as far as a lot of the pressures that were given up, I mean, they allowed 30% of pressures on their dropbacks on Sunday. That's tied for the second lowest this season. But the Falcons had a 10% sack percentage on Sunday, which is the second highest that the Panthers have given up this year, behind Buffalo, had a 22.6% sack percentage on week 12 or week 8 rather. We're not even at week 12. I don't even know why I said that. We are week 12 now, but in week 8 earlier this season. Linebacker injuries, also another thing to look at. Christian Roseboom went out in the second half with a right hamstring injury. No update there. He's not going to give it to us until Thursday, unless it's something significant. Dave does not tell us how banged up somebody is. But Christian Roseboom went out in the second half again with that right hamstring injury. Trevin Wallace did not play in the game on Sunday because of a shoulder injury. They had a guy in, I think it's Miami, Young Meta. I'm going to have to go ask this dude what his name is, how to pronounce it when I see him later on this week in the locker room. But he played 5 snaps yesterday. So that is probably not what you want to see, is guys not named Christian Roseboom and Trevin Wallace, and even Claude Sherless at this point in time playing significant. Now, 5 snaps, maybe not significant, but those were at the end of the game. So certainly there was significance to them. That's the bad. And then the ugly, as I always say, there's nothing ugly about a win. Well, the Jets game is pretty ugly, but there's nothing ugly about a win in the NFL. And here's the saying goodbye to another ugly stat. This comes from John Todd. He is an NFL Network researcher. He put this out on Sunday, saying that Bryce Young has won each of his last 2 starts in which he faced a 14-plus point deficit during the game. That was Sunday against Atlanta, and in Week 5 versus Miami. Young had lost each of his first 18 career starts in which he faced a 14-plus point deficit before the Dolphins come back in Week 5. Now, of course, quarterback wins is not a stat, but the Panthers, they had lost in those situations with Bryce Young as their quarterback. So you can go ahead and wipe that away twice, down 2 touchdowns this season, and they've been able to come back and win in large part because of the plays that Bryce made against Miami. Really, a lot of it was Rico, but certainly they won because of Bryce on Sunday down in Atlanta, which begs the question, why did it take until week 11 for the passing game to look like that? We'll try to answer that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And it's this simple, guys. If you look at a game, like let's say whoever UConn's playing in basketball, if they're playing a cupcake, East Poughkeepsie State, just bet the money line, put $5 down. You're going to make like 13 cents. Doesn't really matter, but you get $300 in bonus bets. That's free money to use to then bet on some actual games that can make you some money. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So after the Panthers' passing offense looked broken against the Saints, and even in a win against Green Bay didn't look very good, and, well, Andy Dalton had to start, broke his thumb, so maybe we can throw out the result against Buffalo. But with Bryce so far this season up until Sunday, it hadn't been pretty. And it was really confusing considering that at the end of last year, in particular, the final 9 games, Bryce looked pretty damn good throwing the ball, especially against Kansas City and Tampa Bay the first time, on the road against Philadelphia, a game that they probably should have won. And, of course, back in Week 18 in Atlanta, the man was cooking. So why this season did we not see second half of the year Bryce Young? And I had plenty of y'all ask me that last week on the weekly Wednesday mailbag, and I went back just to watch what I said, just so I wasn't saying something different this week than what I said last week as far as my feelings. But what I said last week, and something that I also said a lot last year, was that very clearly Dave Canales just does not, or at least did not, heading into Sunday, trust Bryce Young. Now, why would that be? Well, if you look at last season, beginning of the year, week 1 and week 2, made a lot of sense because Bryce was just god-awful and turned the ball over. So it makes sense why Dave wouldn't trust him. And even when he came back that week against Denver, Dave was saying earlier on in the week that he was focused on Andy Dalton and moving forward with Andy and how the offense could be better with Andy. Nothing about Bryce. He understood why the questions are being asked, but we're focused on Andy. This is about Andy. That's all he could say on that Monday. Then the next day, Andy Dalton gets in that car accident. And then the next day, Bryce Young is out there with the ones. But we saw in Denver, okay, while Bryce is back, Dave ain't going to let this guy throw the ball down the field until the game is out of hand and it's garbage time and doesn't really matter. It's not like Bryce did anything to prove Dave wrong. He had 2 interceptions in that game as well and continued the trend of not taking care of the football. But we saw the game against New Orleans. And then we saw the game in Munich against the Giants. And Dave at that point said, Bryce is starting to show us something. And we saw what he was able to do against Kansas City after the bye, against Tampa, against Philly. And then finally, Dave Canales had a belief in what Bryce Young could do. And I was thinking that would carry over to this year, especially how things played out back in week 18 in January down in Atlanta. But then Bryce turned the ball over in week 1 and week 2 and really cost the team by spotting both the opponents 10 points each. And I think after that, Dave Canales went right back into the turtle shell of like, we're not going to let this guy beat us, especially when the run game was working. They weren't willing, at least he wasn't willing, to allow Bryce to, I guess, cook and open things up. And that wasn't doing the team any favors, as we saw in that loss a Sunday ago against New Orleans. So with really no choice, knowing that teams were going to have the exact same game plan the Saints defense had, they were going to have to throw the ball. They were going to have to open things up. And what do you know? Your quarterback had the greatest passing performance in the history of this organization. So why did it have to take this long? It has to be all about trust. And I asked somebody, is it simply that Dave didn't trust him? And the person said, you answered your own question. It's kind of crazy that that's how this keeps going. And I have no idea what to expect on Monday night against the 49ers. Is it going to be the turtle shell offense where let's just run the ball and not ask Bryce to do too much? Or is it going to be, all right, let's spread the ball around, even if Dave did say on Monday, organically, that's how 5 different guys had 50-plus receiving yards on Sunday. but we'll see. And that's the thing. Like, I talk to my dad. He's like, you last night, you're kind of like a loss for words because it's kind of hard to sit here, watch what you see all season long, and then see what you saw on Sunday and be able to square what exactly has happened and what led to that. Like, how can you throw for 102 yards in a win and then throw for 124 in a loss and then turn around and throw for 448 and absolutely dice up a secondary that had been playing well? Like Drake May, I think, had 259 yards. That was the most passing yards by a quarterback against that Falcons defense all year long, and Bryce Young nearly doubled it. Well, maybe not nearly, but he had almost 200 yards more than that. Like, it's insane to go from that. And the only explanation I can have at this point in time, because very clearly they have talent at wide receiver, and we have seen, like against Green Bay, really the only time his rookie year we saw the talent level that Bryce Young has. We saw it last year against Kansas City. We saw it against Philadelphia. We saw it against Tampa. We saw it against Atlanta. We have seen enough to know he's capable. And that's what the most frustrating thing about it is. How can he have those kind of performances and then most of the performances that he ever has? Like Sunday feels like more of an aberration than more to come. And that's just based off of the history of Bryce as a starter here in Carolina. But he's capable. So what was it? Because is it him? It doesn't really feel like it could be him. There's no way you can do that in the NFL and be a bad player. It's not the receivers, the offensive line. Only one of the sacks credited to them, and now it's Chandler Zavala, who's not a good player. So it's not the O-line. It's got to be Dave and the play calling and not trusting Bryce. I'm sure some of you are saying, I've been telling you this, Julian. Finally, you listen. Guys, I'm still, even while saying all this to you, just apoplectic and bewildered by everything that I saw on Sunday and have seen through the first 11 weeks of this season, and trying to understand why the hell can it look like that? And then most weeks look so completely opposite to that. And how can anyone sit here and accept that? Like, it's just crazy that that's been the case. Bryce did have the ankle injury on Sunday. David Newton tried mightily to get any information out of Dave Canales. I don't know. David's there every single Monday. He knows that Dave ain't going to tell us anything unless somebody has tore their Achilles or their bicep or has a significant knee sprain is going on IR. If it ain't an IR situation, he ain't going to tell us what's going on until Wednesday, this week, Thursday, with them playing on Monday. I know mom ain't not proper English and all that, but whatever. So yeah, his ankle injury, we'll find out more about that. If he played through it on Sunday, unlike against New York, couldn't play through it, I think he'll be able to play on Monday night against the 49ers. As far as the receivers getting all that work in, Dave said that it was all just organic, wasn't anything they were forcing. If anything, they did try to get XL some one-on-one opportunities, like on that 36-yard touchdown down the field where he's absolutely cooked that corner who then fumbled on the next possession. AJ Terrell was following T-Mac throughout the day, so they knew they had an opportunity to get Jalen and get XL the ball. But other than that, it was just Bryce being that point guard, doing his job, being the Steph Curry of the NFL, like we were all told pre-draft wise. And then as far as Corey Thornton goes, why did he play more? Dave said that he's been showing them a lot of ability at practice, that they can count on him. And they thought he was a good matchup of his size and length against Atlanta, knowing that they're going to move Drake London all around. And again, he was the highest graded player defensively for the Panthers on Sunday in that win against Atlanta. So those are some of the things that at least stood out to me from what Dave Canales had to say. But still, it's like, because Mike K asked him, what did you learn about yourself as a play caller? Which I think was Mike's way of asking, hey, Dave, why did it take you 11 weeks to open up the offense? And Dave didn't really give a very compelling answer at all. But maybe we can just ask him plainly. Maybe I'll do that on Wednesday, even if I don't want, or I guess Thursday. It would be pretty far away from what had it happen on Sunday. Maybe I'll ask just plainly, hey, man, what the hell? It's like, what the hell? Like, how is it that bad? And in that spectacular, like we saw on Sunday, we'll see if it continues on Monday night. I don't know what to expect. I guess I should expect it to go back to being bad. That'd probably be more of the Niners than necessarily the play calling. But at this point, who the hell knows? On Fridays throughout the regular season, I give you my 3 keys victory. Then on Tuesdays, we go back over those keys and review how the Panthers did. We'll do that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over there at Peloton. Look, folks, it's time to break through the busiest time of the year with a brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus that's powered by Peloton IQ. It's Peloton's most elevated technology and equipment yet that gives you real-time guidance, and it gives you endless ways to move, whether you want to work out by yourself or if you want to work out with your favorite instructor, like my personal favorite, Alex Toussaint. He always gets me fired up to tackle the day. And the thing I like about Peloton, it helps me achieve more in less times. They have features that help you plan, stay motivated, track your progress, and Peloton IQ also provides personalized workout plans and recommendations. That's something that I use right now during the busiest time of the year covering the NFL. They plan my workouts for me based on my mood, my vibe, and also my favorite instructors. So make sure you check it out and use it because it also helps you correct your form in real time, and it maximizes your reps. It counts your reps so that you can do it smarter, safer, and more efficient. Let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Back here on Locked on Panthers every Friday throughout the regular season, even this Friday with the game on Monday. I give you my 3 keys victory. Then on that following Tuesday, maybe not next week, but typically on Tuesdays like today, I review how the Panthers did with those keys. I don't think I did it last week, but we had other things to talk about. Not a big deal. We're doing it this week. All right, key number 1 from Friday was find balance offensively. The Panthers actually did not do this. They had 25 rushing attempts for 67 yards, 2.7 yards per attempt, which is gross. Rico Dowdle, 19 for 45. And he still had 24 touches, had 5 receptions for 55 yards, was one of those 5 receivers with over 50 plus yards receiving. So he still had a good day with 100 yards on the dot total in that game on Sunday, and nearly had what should have been the game-winning touchdown. Of course, the defense did not get to stop even after the touchdown pass to Tedero McMillan, plus 2-point conversion, which thank God they got that to Jalen Coker, as the defense did not get to stop. And I had somebody hit me up in my DM saying, I'm going to give Bryce credit for 2 game-winning drives. The one at the end of regulation that should have been to the game, and of course the one that happened there in overtime, which I would actually give to Tommy Tremble. I know they don't give that stat to the tight end, but I would give it to Tommy. His probably greatest moment as a Panther in his 5 seasons here. That was insane to watch. But yeah, they did not really run the ball well on Sunday. Not super surprised by that. I know the Falcons statistically have been one of the worst run defenses in the league, but again, copycat league. They were going to look at what New Orleans did, and they were going to dare Bryce Young to beat him. And buddy, did he do it. 31 of 45, 448 yards, 3 touchdowns. The Panthers, looking at EPA over on True Media, 27.23 EPA on pass throws. So, like, this is different from just like a normal drop back. Like, when they actually threw the ball, they added 27 points. Expected points added. Like, that's what they did on Sunday. When you look at the run game, every time they rushed it, not with Bryce Young, it was a minus 5.09. So they gained 27 points throwing the ball, lost 5 points for running the ball on Sunday. So clearly a massive chasm in between the pass game and the run game on Sunday. All that matters is that they won. And really, like, what I wanted to see them do was to get the pass game going, take some pressure off of Rico Dowdle. We'll see this week if he's dealing with a quad. He did not really look to be that explosive on Sunday until that pass play at the end of the fourth quarter. Chuba Hubbard had 4 carries, 21 yards. So good to see that Chuba had some burst there. And I still think he's going to be a factor at some point in time for this offense down the stretch. You're going to need him to be, especially if you want to be a playoff team. You're going to have all hands on deck. No pun intended. To be, is that even a pun? I don't know what I'm saying, but you need everybody to be out there giving you everything they have. And we got that. The Panthers did. The Panthers got that on Sunday against Atlanta with Chuba Hubbard. So did they find balance offensively? No, but they may be able to find it now because the offense was opened up and their quarterback once again showed you, hey, if you give me a chance, I'm actually capable. Number 2 is stop the run. The Falcons had been awful running the football in the previous 4 games. Now they did have 140 in that overtime, back-to-back overtime losses for them. That's tough. And their OT loss in Berlin. This time they at least got to go drive home instead of hop on a plane and take 10 hours to fly back to Atlanta. But yeah, it was a tale of 2 halves on Sunday. First half, Bijan. And thank you to the person who DM'd me. Because last week, and I told you all this, Thursday crossover, you heard me saying Bijan. Aaron Freeman saying Bijan. On Friday, I'm like, okay, if Aaron covers the Falcons and is saying Bijan, and I've always felt and known it to be Bijan, maybe it's Bijan. Then someone sent me a clip from, I guess, training camp, NFL Network, all that, and Bijan Robinson was saying my name is Bijan. So yeah, Bijan Robinson, 15 attempts, 78 yards, touchdown, and 5.2 yards per attempt in the first half. Had 2 receptions, 17 yards. He was excellent in the first half. But after that, the Falcons, they didn't do anything against the run or running the ball. They were held to 31 rushing yards on 11 attempts, 2.8 yards per attempt in the second half. Bijan still got to 100 yards on the day. The Falcons had 94 yards rushing overall, 5.5 yards per attempt in the first half. The Panthers had a 45% defensive success rate against the run in the first half, 72.7% against the run in the second half and in overtime. So that was clearly a key as you watch Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Michael Penix Jr. just show out there in the first half as the Falcons scored on 3 straight drives, a touchdown that is, and got up 21-7. But Carolina came storming back to win that game in OT. Turnovers was the last key, and one I feel like I got to put out there every single week because when the Panthers turn the ball over, they just have a tough time winning. They had, no turnovers. Carolina had none. The Falcons had that lone turnover on that kickoff, and that was one of the – it honestly actually wasn't a difference in the game because Carolina didn't do anything with it. They won a turnover on downs, but that was a possession Atlanta didn't get, and that really shifted the tide of the momentum of that game. The Panthers now are 4-0 when they win the turnover battle. And I had someone hit me up on Twitter on Monday, and they were saying to me in my notifications, they were saying that Bryce Young has played 12 career games with 0 turnovers. That's interceptions, fumbles, loss. And the Panthers were 10-2 in those games. I don't know where he got those numbers, but those are wildly incorrect. He's made 15 starts in his career, y'all, without a turnover. And the Panthers are 8-7 in those games. So I don't know where that number came from. Because that's just like patently false. But yeah, they're 8-7 when Bryson turned all over, and they're 4-0 this year when the Panthers as a team collectively don't turn the ball over. So yeah, like that's a key to victory every single week. And those were my 3 keys to victory. I'll give you my 3 keys again this Friday with it being a Monday night game. I have something up my sleeve. Hopefully it'll get worked out later this week to get figured out. But that is going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast and Network. Hosted by yours, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show for free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council. Where on Wednesday, tomorrow, I'm back answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. At me, DM me over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council to get those questions into me right now. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And I'll talk to y'all on Wednesday.